Taiwan's status is a politically sensitive issue. The island off the coast of China has its own president, a democratically elected government, and a strong economy. But Beijing regards it as a breakaway province that must be reunited with the mainland by force if necessary. It condemns the US and EU for what it calls provocative visits to the island. A US congressional delegation landed in Taipei on Tuesday. It follows the first official tour from EU legislators last week who praised Taiwan as an ally for democracy and freedom. China's Foreign Affairs Ministry accused the US and EU of collaborating with Taiwanese independence forces. President Xi Jinping warned against what he calls a return to Cold War-era divisions.
A lot of people are busy cleaning up today after the weekend storms took down trees and damaged buildings all across the tri-state. Multiple tornadoes, strong winds, pounding rains, even hail blasted across Long Island. The storm flipped over planes at Brookhaven Calabro Airport. It also ripped down the front facade of a Chipotle restaurant and snapped nearby trees in half.
It was amazing. It flew through the neighborhood in 10 minutes.
The wind also brought down trees that crashed onto two cars in Shirley. Power was knocked out temporarily, but it has since been restored.
Panicked locals take to jet skis to speed through rising floodwaters and rescue stranded cattle from a farm in Abbotsford in Western Canada. This is British Columbia, where in 2 days a month's worth of rain has swept through this coastal region, causing major floods and landslides. On the ground, a state of emergency was declared as authorities confirmed one death and warned the toll would rise, as one report said as many as 18,000 locals remain cut off or trapped throughout isolated mountain towns.
We need to act now to make the changes in our community and in our economy that will protect us from these types of events in the future.
He's calling this a once-in-a-500-year event, a sharp reminder of the perils of climate change, just days after the finale of the Climate Summit in Glasgow, where world leaders eventually agreed to keep rising temperatures to 1.5 degrees, if indeed they can. This is the second such tragedy to befall British Columbia in recent months, after a massive wildfire in the same region eventually destroyed the entire town of Lytton, seen here, over a matter of hours in June. Making matters worse, the torrential floods have also severed access to the country's largest port in Vancouver, which was already disrupted due to COVID-related supply chain chaos. That's making rescue efforts even harder, as warnings of a second massive downpour of rain force thousands to hurriedly leave their homes.
In Europe, where COVID cases are surging, increasing more than 50% in just the last month, which is why several countries are now reimposing restrictions, and angry protests are erupting as a result. Police in Brussels using water cannons to disperse marchers. Demonstrators there are angry at tightened COVID measures and possible vaccine mandates. Across Europe, frustration is running high. ABC's Julia McFarlane is in London for us tonight.
Tonight, violent protests erupting across Europe against strict COVID-19 restrictions. The continent again the epicenter of the pandemic. In the Dutch city of Rotterdam, angry crowds seen torching police cars, burning bicycles and setting off flares. Police firing warning shots, injuring protesters, deploying water cannons, trying to quell the unrest that has been brewing for days after the Netherlands have reimposed lockdown to try and curb spiraling cases, and now plans to introduce a vaccine passport for indoor venues. Officials say dozens of people have been arrested, several officers injured by furious crowds throwing rocks. In Belgium, police clashing with demonstrators, days after the government introduced new COVID restrictions in response to a jump in infections. It now has one of the highest rates of infections in Europe. And the Austrian government rolling out a total lockdown starting tomorrow. Austria also becoming the first country in Europe to make the vaccine mandatory to all citizens, not just health workers. From February, people who still refuse the vaccine may find themselves fined. Vaccination rates in parts of Europe have slowed in recent months. many countries with low take-up, like Germany, Austria and Slovakia, seeing a rise in cases.
Well, the situation in Europe is likely to get worse as winter approaches. People will be mixing indoors more, especially in the run-up to Christmas as families travel to reunite. The World Health Organization warning that unless urgent action is taken, Europe may see 500,000 more deaths by March. Lindsay?
Just astonishing numbers. Julia, thank you.
Tens of thousands of people protested across Austria against the renewed restrictions and the vaccine mandate, as Europe again becomes the epicenter of the coronavirus pandemic. Austria entered its fourth lockdown on Monday. The whole nation, including those who are fully vaccinated, have to stay home for all but essential reasons, including work, exercise and shopping for essentials. Austria is also the first European country to make the COVID vaccination a legal requirement, with the law due to take effect in February. The penalty for not getting vaccinated by that time are heavy fines. I spoke to Austrian activist Alexander Schugel, who is against the new measures.
The government wants to force us to get vaccinated, and if we do not get vaccinated, we are not allowed to work, we're not allowed to go anywhere, we are not allowed to do anything, and we have to pay 3,600 euros as a fine. And obviously the fine can be, the state can ask me a few times to pay this fine because we don't know the rules yet. We don't know what would happen if we pay the fine afterwards and you're still not vaccinated. What are they going to do? The Viennese demonstration was by far the biggest demonstration I've ever seen, and also historically one of the biggest demonstrations we ever had in Austria. With confidence we can say that around 100,000 people, maybe even a little bit more, came to this demonstration. Austria is, as you know, a quite small country. We only have less than 9 million inhabitants, and 100,000 people is really a huge number. And now many people want to do a strike, so many people want to stop working in order to force the government to stop those terrible rules. And I know personally that lots of demonstrations will happen today, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, and so on.
The reimposition of COVID-19 restrictions turned violent in Belgium and the Netherlands over the weekend, which could be an indication of more to come as governments across the EU clamp down on restrictions in a bid to curb the spread of coronavirus.
Our top focus this hour, 27 migrants were killed after their dinghy capsized while they were attempting to cross the English Channel from France to Britain. This is the worst disaster involving migrants to occur in the waters separating these two countries. British and French officials have already started trading the blame for this incident. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson said that he was shocked by the deaths, called on France to do more to stop people from making this dangerous crossing.
Of course, we have to work with our French friends, with our European partners. And I say to our partners across the Channel, now is the time for us all to step up, to work together, to do everything we can to break these gangs who are literally getting away with murder.
French Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin put the blame solely on human smugglers, said that 4 smugglers connected to this particular crossing have been arrested. Despite the weather conditions, more and more migrants than usual left France's Channel coastline on Wednesday to take advantage of the calm sea conditions. On your screens right now, the visuals of a similar migrant crossing which was spotted by Reuters on Wednesday. They were reported to have safely arrived on the British shore later. While French police have prevented more crossings in 2021 than in previous years, they've only managed to partially stop the flow of migrants wanting to reach Britain. Gaining control of its borders was one of UK's main reasons for Brexit, and such migrant crossings have become one of the many sources of tension between Paris and London. The English Channel is one of the world's busiest shipping lanes and currents are strong. Crossings are attempted between Calais and Dover since that's where the channel is the narrowest, and at just 30 kilometers, human traffickers typically overload the dinghies, which are basically flimsy inflatable boats in these cases, and leave the migrants at the mercy of the channel. According to France, over 31,000 people have attempted to reach Britain this year, and nearly 8,000 people have been rescued at sea. According to British authorities, over 25,000 people have arrived illegally in 2021. That is already triple the amount recorded last year. Meanwhile, protests erupted in Calais against this tragedy.
Pouring rain and pitch black. This is a frontline trench in eastern Ukraine. We follow a Ukrainian army soldier who leads us along the path thick with mud. Filming using night vision, there are trenches like these that snake hundreds of kilometres across a conflict zone in which more than 14,000 people have been killed. The sound of machine gun fire echoes through the blackness.
So in the last 10 minutes we've heard what sounds like a lot more small arms fire coming from the direction of Donetsk airport. The commander is taking us up to a forward observation post that is a lot closer to separatist positions.
We reach the observation post where 3 soldiers stand in the cold. They are nervous and tell us to keep our voices down because their enemy is close. This soldier, who doesn't want to identify himself, says he had friends who joined the Russian-backed separatists fighting the government. Early morning light reveals trees in the foggy gloom. The rain has stopped. Soldiers discuss the night's events and plan, looking out across a conflict-broken landscape for an enemy with no doubt equal convictions, who say they also have a right to fight. Charles Stratford, Al Jazeera, Vodina, Eastern Ukraine.